or grow it. From the Stash Podcast.
Are you a grower? Are you tired of lugging around too many bottles? Is it too expensive? Is it so confusing? Tired of reading feed charts? Well, guess what? There is an easier way. Introducing the Stash Blend. You can now get your bag of Stash Blend premium additives that you can add to your garden using just about any base nutrients. Go to stashblend.com and get your order today.
A huge shout out to AC Infinity. They recently released their humidifier. This is an easy top fill system that allows you to adjust the moisture levels from the outside of your tent. It connects to the controller 69, which makes things so much easier to use. You can follow it on your app. You can see it from outside the tent without ever having to step inside. If you head over to acinfinity.com, use promo code THESTASH15, you can save a few dollars off not only the humidifier, but all of their products. And while you're at it, thank them for being a sponsor of today's video.
So one thing I do want to talk about, I'm transitioning into a different feeding process. I'm finishing up my organics, like the organic mix that I had. And for the first time, I'm using the Build-A-Flower in my flowering regimen. Chris, have you used that yet?
Yeah, build a soil, build a flower.
Build-A-Flower. Yeah, Build-A-Soil is Build-A-Flower.
Yep.
Yeah. Good results? Yay, nay? It was cheap as fuck.
Yeah,
Affordable.
I've only used it like once as a top dress and flower. That's about it. Plants seem fine, so I don't really have a whole bunch of experience using it. And then I've just been using Craft Blend since then.
Yeah, I did use it my first run. What I did use Build-A-Soil. All I use is the Boss mix, and that was it. The Build-A-Soil Super Soil mix, the 3.0, so to speak. And then I did the top with Craft, and that was it. Good results. But I've got a buddy who swears by adding this in, I'll see a lot more significant flower production. And like as cool as that sounds, is that input that big of a difference? Throwing that much in? I mean, I guess if you only did it once, it's hard to tell. But yeah, I was just a Keef Maker over here on Twitch. Just kind of took the words out of my mouth to throw. I'm not a worm guy, but the worm castings, you can definitely just grab worm castings and toss them in. That was what I was just going to do instead. Have you been mixing stuff up your own or just following the same recipe?
I love worm castings, adding that in. I'd like to add them in actually transplant as well. So once I dig that hole in, scoop of worm castings right in the bottom of the hole, sprinkle a mycorrhizal onto the roots, and then boom, transplant in. But I also use worm castings as like a top dressing, and I do use it along with Craft Blend. And so it's beneficial. I mean, the microbes that are on the actual worm castings, it helps, right? It helps with the amendment breakdown of the Craft Blends. So yeah, I like using both of those at the same time.
Yeah, I'm using the synthetic side on my other grow. I haven't touched it. No worm castings at all. And now that over here is going to be full organic, I think I'm going to be doing that. Have you ever thought about implementing, like we talked Synganic before, like little this, little that. Have you ever considered even worm castings, especially during transplant when you're going into a hotter soil or something like that?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I actually tried to maintain my own worm bin because the benefits of worm castings are undeniable. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to try to create my own worm bin. And I did really well at it, as a matter of fact. I started it probably about the early summer. And I did everything from the layers, had the two bins, had a drip system. I could open the tap. It worked really well. Problem was, what people don't tell you is that it's very difficult to maintain this habitat in your home. You need to do this outside. But being in a Canadian climate, I knew that I outside would have been a better option. But with a Canadian climate, it's freezing cold outside for 7 months, 5 to 6 months of the year. 5 months, let's not exaggerate too much. And so worms don't survive in that kind of environment. And believe it or not, if you do the bin correctly, I know Belgium Andy in the chat mentions the smell, bro. Actually, if you do it correctly, there is not a smell. It's actually quite quite self-contained in regards to its whole habitat because you've got it covered with newspapers and so on. The problem is the little bugs, man. The bugs that that bucket attracted was incredible and something I wasn't prepared for. So yeah, it's difficult, and I'm not willing to pay to have that shipped to me. So and I would have to find a local source, and I'm not entirely sure. I know we have good earthworms for fishing around here, but I'm not sure where to find local castings.
I have worm bin in my garage, so kind of still in my house, but kind of not really in my
Much
house,
better
right?
option.
Yeah, and it's I've had it for coming up on 2 years now, and I know exactly what you mean. There's been times where this bin was just I added too much inputs in there. You know what I mean? Too many greens. I felt like at times I didn't have the right balance between the greens and browns. I did battle a bunch of flies, right? There's flies everywhere. I mean, even white flies were in there and stuff. But I got it back under control, and I think it's beneficial to have it. It also kind of opens up my eyes a little bit amount of food waste that I have. It's like, man, I need to I try to eat all and only make what I'm going to eat and stuff now a lot more. So I'm more paying attention to that a little bit more. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean, man. When I had huge infestation of fungus gnats all over them, I was spraying. I did spray, I used, spray some neem on there, right? Kill back the population. Spray mammoth can control, kills off the population, you know what I mean? So things like that helped me. But really, what is the root cause of all that? It was just, for me, it was just adding in too many inputs. Because it does need to be moist. That's another thing I struggled with is the bin was almost dried out before. And once it dries out, worms obviously die off at that point. So my population of worms knocked way back because I almost dried out the whole container. So yeah, it has its own set of challenges, I think. So, but
again, like organic, again, although I'm salt-based, I'm synthetic, doesn't mean I can't appreciate the effort that goes into maintaining an organic setup. The not just the effort that goes into it, but the amount that you can recycle your own waste. Like you said, the amount of waste that we give off is incredible, and not to mention the stuff that we can actually cut down on is even more. You know what I mean? When you're throwing away your after supper and you're like, oh my god, you know what I mean? That's a lot of good food. So it's I have a respect for that, and they're I do think that should be the final option. Everyone should be organic. You shouldn't be shipping these bottles around and so on and so forth. And
or at least have a dry, like a powder based or dry based supplement. You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't always be everything liquid. There's a lot of different ones that still are synthetic.
Liquid's horrible.
That I see. I think Rare Genetics has Dryline, Floraflex, multiple other companies, and it's not liquid based. And I feel like that's just so wasteful. Especially the longer you grow, it's easy to say, it's easier, and it is, of course, just like anything. It's done. Buying little containers of Kool-Aid versus buying the powder that you still need to add the sugar to, or buying just the powder that has the sugar in it. The easier it gets, the more people want it. But at the same time, it's more wasteful. And I think that's just a bad way to go about it. And that's where, not to just plug it, but that's where the Stash Blend, we were very big on trying to incorporate a lot of things in one container and make sure that it was powder based, nutrient. So that way it was easily usable in a form of traveling. We could send it wherever. It won't be expensive there. Somebody could store it for a longer amount of time, and you don't have to use as much in the product in order to actually get the results that you need. So maintaining more sustainability in the garden is extremely important. We talked about this in other episodes, but I think people sleep on the fact that sustainability is more than just your pocket. You know what I'm saying? You got to think about the earth when you're doing this stuff. It's very, very important for long-term longevity. As a grower, we won't have anything to grow if we keep on pulling everything from nature and not putting back.
Yeah, we had to go with the powder. I mean, longer shelf life, right? Longer shelf life. It would have added cost if we made it a liquid. It is something that we explored, right? But the cost would have been too much. The shipping cost would also increase. And essentially, you're mixing with water. A lot of people criticize shipping water. So the powder was just a better way to go for sure.
Well, with grocery stores closing down all over the place, it's tough to rely on that. It was different when you could just go down the street and grab a couple bottles and do what you need, and it's heavily concentrated, 5 mils to 10 mils per gallon of water last you for a while. But now things have changed, and if you're ordering it all online, if you get it all from Grower's House, shout out Grower's House, but it's a big, heavy shipment. You're going to get a pallet when you're talking about your media and your nutrients. So figuring out ways to do things in your backyard is amazing. If you can do that, it's beautiful. Finding some sort of supplement that you can have an alternative feeding regimen that costs you a lot less money, also amazing. And it's better for the earth, again, that we're not taking all these minerals and all this crap.
East Coast Grower in the chat asks, is there a way to use organic inputs like Green Rush, Gaia Green in a hydroponic setup without negative effects on the roots or water?
It's not so much the roots in the water. It's more the like equipment.
Yeah. Is it gonna filter through all, like some of that stuff isn't gonna be broken down, right? I would like, I know if you're making a tea of sorts, if you at least run it through some like cheesecloth or something, but then I'm assuming you're gonna be losing a lot of the benefits that whatever you're filtering out would add in a natural setup or in a medium setup, a soil or a potting mix setup versus a hydroponic setup.
Yeah, soluble versus insoluble. I'm pretty sure a lot of those organic amendments from Gaia Green aren't soluble.
No.
So yeah, you're just going to have particles kind of floating around on there, and plant can't uptake it. I'm not familiar with Green Rush. Something to look into. Have you guys heard of Green Rush? Assume it's like
Green
a
Planet.
No.
But Green Rush, no.
So I'm not familiar with that one, but yeah, you could look at the solubility to see if it would work in a hydroponic setup or not.
Yeah, I think that's where it's tough at hydroponic, where unless you're making like a almost tea that it sits in, so to speak, and you're having that sort of environment that is microbial rich, you got to be able to control that water temperature heavily. So it's different in that sense. And I feel like with soil, it's going to be more friendly in terms of inputs that are going to break down over time versus something that water is a direct right there. It needs to go quickly. So it needs to be ready for the plant in that case, and having it liquid form is really the only way to do it properly. I've even tried before with Great White, and while it'll go in there, you'll notice at a certain point there's just gunk at the bottom of the container, and your reservoir just has this sandiness in there. So then they end up having a liquid version that they have, but again, it costs more money, and you're using a lot more because why? It's a lot of water, but it's the only way for it to work in water. It has to be, soluble.
Yeah, I've looked up Green Rush. Looks like it's Green Rush Nutrients. I'm actually not familiar with this line at all, but looks like it's a powdered base. Yeah, I would have to look into, clicking on each description, see what elements are in there, and see if they're soluble or insoluble. That'll really reveal whether or not they're usable in hydroponics or not.
Yeah, it's tough, and that's where hydroponic. There's a reason why general hydroponics is so popular, and the Lucas formula is just a lot of people use it. It's because it's tried and true, and it works for a situation when you're dealing with water. It's ready for water. The big thing for organic, I feel like that's different as well. A lot of people are going to say like that's the best way to do it. When you're, it sounds harsh to say, when you're a cash cropper, we'll say, or somebody who's more focused on the dollar, you're probably going to be pushing heavily for hydroponic. Or when your environment, your setup, or your restrictions force you to do that, I could see doing hydroponic. And while it also is more sustainable in certain cases because you're using the media that you can maybe recycle or RDWC, that's cool. The nutrients are still going to be synthetic. 99% of the time, it's going to be synthetic nutrients. So it's tough to maintain, but you're going to be getting quicker, heavier harvests for the most part. I mean, I've seen it firsthand from switching from DWC to soil. Unless you're doing auto watering to be doing crop steering, which, I mean, there's science behind pushing your plant further to give it more food, lowering the EC, increasing the EC is like a higher bell effect. And you can see, I mean, I've seen the test and the data to prove it, that you can increase your yields and potentially terpenes, but there's all science to it, and it's all heavy control. Having just soil or cocoa when you're hand watering it, you're not going to be able to do quite that same thing. So I could see hydroponics being what a lot of people like. I just wouldn't recommend doing any powder in there ever, no matter what.
Question from Phil777 Flip. How long is it possible to let some soil sit when you've added organic nutrients? He says, I mean, it usually takes 2 to 4 weeks to have it ready, but what is the maximum time? I think it's a good question. It really depends on what's in the organic nutrients, right? Some of these are going to take a long time. right? I think like green sand is one that takes a while to break down. Yeah, I mean, there's different breakdown times depending on what amendments you're talking about. So it's really hard to give you a blanket answer on that one. But there are some things, some minerals that can take years. You add in, and it takes a long time. You add it in, and it won't actually have any impact on the current grow. You'd have to reuse that soil again and again in order to actually get the benefits from what you've added in. So
Yeah, and then also like if that soil is just sitting, it's not going to be as good as if that soil's in use and there's life in there. And of course there is when you're adding amendments to it, but if it's just never being like maintained in terms of moisture, if it over dries, it's going to kill off the microbial life in there. So you got to make sure that you're almost treating that soil like a living organism after you amend it and maintain it, so to speak. Now food's not going to be depleting from it like you'd see a plant eating it, but if it sits there long enough, it definitely could run into some issues. But if you don't maintain the moisture in that, you get even more issues. It's a waste. I've done that myself, and it's like now I've got damn near inert media sat there for 6 months, dry as a bone.
Gonna pump it back to life. Yeah, I just googled it. Green sand can take 12 to 14 months to become bioavailable. So yeah, that is one of the ones I was thinking of that takes a while for it to actually become available.
That's
But yeah,
that's super soil 101, baby. You have
organic,
it for 5-6 years, and all of a sudden it's this beast.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Get it. I don't really think
it's just
necessary.
no, I don't know.
Nope.
See, I think that's where purchasing things like Dr. Earth or these pre-done, ready-for-you mixes is really advantageous because it makes it so you got something that's ready to go and is
You don't have to know.
be used. Yeah, it's great to know all this stuff, but the beauty of blends like Build a Soil, like they have, or even the Stash blend, it makes it so you don't have to know the science. But I do recommend knowing some behind it. But the companies that put these products out, they want you to get good results, and there's a lot more things that are out there that have organic alternatives that you could even do at home. I just feel like, I don't know, I'm always that guy of like, I don't want a bunch of soil in my house, and I don't want bugs in the house and this, that, and the other thing. So my organic recipe may not be the same as everyone's organic recipe.
Right. And someone who's living on an acreage, they've got 10, 20, 30, 100 acres to their name. They've got nothing but space where they can section off parts for compost and gardening, and then yeah, that's for you. You can keep soil in a bed feeding for years on end. It's just it doesn't work for everyone. So that brings me to the next question. Plays games a lot 32, love your name, in the chat says, I have a few good grow shops around me, but they don't seem to have anything really soluble. They did have Athena, but that's all I remember seeing. You got to remember too, grow shops, people are paying for space on the shelf, right? So the best products aren't always the ones that are on the shelf. The ones that can pay the price are often the ones that are on the shelf. And that does suck. But it makes me think that if that's the case, then you should be doubling down on other alternatives. Maybe maintaining your own compost, worm castings, doing your own organic. Maybe that's the option. So you don't have to go and be a slave to, organic or the internet to get everything shipped. There's always options, but I think that's why there's so many different ways to grow, is because there's just so many environments and so many different demographics that are trying to grow this beautiful plant of ours, and they're trying to use what they have and what's available to maximize the most out of their environment. And here we have all these incredible ways to grow great products. So find a method that works for you.
I do think that makes good sense. So it's a great point. Is like this is a plant, and then once you learn the science of the plant, you can find those inputs locally. It doesn't matter prohibition land or not. If you're deep in a rural area, it's cool to be able to get what the person you watch on YouTube has, for sure. But if you take the time to learn plant science, and this particular plant science, you're going to be able to find that there's alternative inputs that you can use that may not be as quick and easy, and may not be as nutrient rich potentially, but there's no reason to not do something. You know what I'm saying? It really sucks when you've got situations of like, you can't get soil easily. Like, I don't want to get mine from Home Depot, and I had to order it online, Shadow Grower's House, and there's a lot of different companies you can get stuff from still, but you're paying for shipping, which sucks. It's just what it is, man.
Mm-hmm. Frequent asks, hey guys, is it all good to use synthetic nutrients in a cocoa/perlite/worm casting mix? Or is the synthetics bad for the worm casting's goodness? Go ahead, Chris, since I read it.
Yeah, you can definitely use it. I've used it before. Cocoa perlite worm castings. Certainly, you're going to get some people that are going to say, "Yeah, you're killing off microbes with the synthetic nutrients." There's that's a topic in itself. I think we could say that because really it depends on how much you're using, right? If you're using a ton of synthetic nutrients, yes, it's killing off microbes. If some of the microbes aren't able to take the synthetic nutrients, they're just not bred for it or whatever. I mean, I'm talking to Guru over at formerly of the Dude Grow Show. He was talking about how some microbes are bred for high salinity environments. And so, if you get the right microbe mix, they could definitely work. But with the worm castings, then maybe they're a little bit more sensitive. But you can definitely still get away with using it.
See, I think that's where this organic approach, like you said before, there's a lot of things you can do to increase what you're doing in your garden, and there's a lot of things you can do to minimize the cost in your garden. Things like that is a prime example. Being able to basically get more out of the nutrients you're already spending on is massive. If you're not using some sort of beneficial bacteria and some sort of microbe, that would be a great idea to get into worm castings. That's where I was saying it could be a lot more cost effective in your area, depending if you live in a rural space with farming agriculture already. Because I know a lot of farms where I used to live, that was just in abundance. There'd be signs all over the place. Worm castings for sale. You pull up and you get a shovel. Scoop is wild, but it's like that's how it can be some places. And you can also do it yourself too. It's none of this shit's easy. This is farming now. This is where we're getting out of the super smooth, super clean, easy peasy. I don't touch it. It's automated. Da, 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 da. This is where it's getting your hands dirty and getting into it a little bit more. It's different. Not for everybody.
Lieutenant Blazer says he does an organic super soil with synthetic amendments when needed. So yeah, that's another way to go about it, is really start with organic, add in organic, and then just when you need synthetic, when you need that fast acting stuff. I mean, that's what a lot of people do. You're seeing a deficiency start to come on. Instead of adding in something organic that's going to take 1-2+ weeks to break down, some people will add in the liquid feed that's already bioavailable for faster uptake. So yeah, definitely a way to go about it.
Yeah, and that's a smart way to go about it too, in terms of like, if you've got a plant that's going to be finishing up soon, do you want it to be depleted and not get the best results, or do you want to hit it quick? There's foliar that's taken right out of my mouth right there. Perfect. There's foliar sprays to get it, readily available to the leaves, but there's not always, again, something that you have in your garden or, in your regimen already. So that's, we're looking at something that has the uptake that's immediate. Organic nowadays is so different than organic when I first started. Just like LEDs are different than they were when we first started. Organic was just like you had to be some scientist, like a guru, and just know all these things and be able to find it outside. Like you're just hunting, like, oh yes, this is wild Thailand bark that I put inside my plants. Like none of this stuff was knowledgeable until more of the internet breakdowns, and you see people who aren't those key holders, will say, of knowledge, and they're like, this isn't that hard. Like, this word sounds complicated, but here's what it does. And you're like, oh, like for the longest time, I could not say mycorrhizae. Like I just couldn't say it. P got it down a couple weeks ago. It's like these are things last week. These are things that I feel like
say it.
Mycorrhizae.
He has that English accent.
I have to say it English to get it right.
Yeah. But it's science has evolved, of course, but a lot of this stuff is plant science that's been around for like hundreds of years. It's just now it's being digestible for us, average Joes and Janes, to learn how to do it.
Yep. Unless you don't want to, and then you just use synthetic or the stash blend.
Or stash blend. But even with synthetic, I'm not knocking it at all. I still have a synthetic setup with Fontana Plant Science. Like, shout out to them.
Nothing to knock.
No, that's the shit I don't like, is when you're a snob on someone's grow style.
Right.
I want to smoke your
totally
flower.
unnecessary.
I don't care about any of those things. I just
yeah.
smoke the flower.
I've said this time and time again, and this is the HPS. This was the HPS argument versus LED, and it's the same as the argument for organic versus synthetic. I'll hold up 2 flowers. I'll put them in front of you, and you have to tell me which one was organic and which one was synthetic. And if you get it right, it was totally by, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that you're going to be able to tell. It's like looking at an oil stain on a driveway and saying that came from a '69 Ford Mach 1.
You have no idea. It's oil on the
I have
driveway.
to have like
you know?
five different cultivars lined up. Pepsi challenge. Just doom 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 doom.
Now, if the conversation was we're going to line them up, some are indoor and some are outdoor, can you tell the difference? That's a different story. I think I'll get that right 100% of the time, which one's which. But I don't think the argument's there for which is better, synthetic or organic. We've had this argument many times, and it's whichever fits best for you and your environment. If you're watching this on YouTube, we do go live at least once a week, twitch.tv/FromTheStash. You can also follow us on FromTheStash.com. You can also check us out on all our socials. We are From The Stash on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, which clearly our people don't do TikTok, but we get it.
We're not allowed to. Every single thing I post
really
is taken off.
But you can follow us all there. We appreciate you guys, as you guys always do, because helping us in the conversation, keeping it going, much appreciated. Want to hear from you guys too. If you have any questions in regards to today's episode or questions in general, throw them down in the comment section and we'll be sure to answer them on the next live stream, on the next Q&A.
Absolutely.
I see a question here from Slinky. Asks, when is Stash Blend being released? August 10th. So for those you tuning in on YouTube, this is released. You can go buy right now. It's shipped to you. It's out.
Yep.
What's the website?
Stashblend.com.
So it's stashblend.com.
Stashblend.com.
Stashblend.com. Splash bed.
Splash Bob. Stash Blend, baby.
Oh yeah.
And due time disc,
man. And if you're watching this and this is then, well, you should be here on the 10th, man. August 10th. It was epic. I'm just telling you now that you're watching this at a later episode.
You missed it all. It was amazing. There was elephants. There was flyovers. Like
that crazy stuff that Chris did too. Man.
Oh my God.
That was nuts.
If that gets on the internet,
Insane.
I probably won't make it to YouTube.
No,
Yeah.
I did that part out. Yeah.
Should we sesh with Twitch so I could feel less bad? Because if this made it to YouTube.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just making sure we didn't miss anything, which we probably did.
YouTube loves it. They love it.
Yeah. Let us know
if you're in Australia, it's actually YouTube.
Yeah, it's also tomorrow.
On YouTube.
Absolutely.
Dude, it's tomorrow, and if you're in Australia.
Tomorrow.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you guys. Don't forget, if you haven't already, hit that sub button, hit that notification bell so you know just when we drop the next episode, typically on Sundays if none of us are sleeping. But until next time, guys, I'm Pigeons, that's Chris, and that's Rob. Winks in the back. Best looking to the four of us. Have yourself a great night.
Peace.
Peace.